This video is sponsored by Skillshare. Stick around till the end of the video to hear more about that. I really dislike the Justice League. Not in general, I'm specifically talking about the 2017 live action film, which is just, man, where do I even start? Production issues. That's the name of the game here. First, following Batman v Superman's lackluster reception, the film was rewritten to have a lighter tone. Then, after filming a good chunk of the movie, director Zack Snyder had to leave due to a personal tragedy. And who took his place? Joss Whedon, the director of the first two Avengers movies. But he didn't just step up to finish what Snyder started. He went on to write 80 new pages of script, and despite the basic beats of the plot remaining fairly similar throughout, the movie had changed in some very obvious and extreme ways. Also, Henry Cavill, who plays Superman, was busy with Mission Impossible Fallout, and he needed a mustache for that movie. So he filmed with a mustache, and then they took that mustache out in post, and yeah, that's an upper lip, all right. Really though, the end product speaks for itself. It feels like a movie made for a test audience, trimmed and rearranged and cut until it got a score deemed appropriate by the corporate overlords at Warner Bros. The resulting film is, well, it doesn't feel like one film. It's more like two films slapped together with a bright coat of paint haphazardly splattered on top of the whole thing. Basically, the two distinct directorial styles and tones present here don't balance out to make a palatable end product. Instead, there's tonal whiplash as the film seems to fight with itself. But I'm getting a bit ahead of myself, because this obviously isn't the only version of the story out there. If it was, you wouldn't be here. Now we have the Snyder Cut. But right away, it's clear that this isn't just some small change, with little tweaks here and there or a few added scenes. No, the original live-action Justice League in 2017 was 2 hours long. But this one is 4 hours long. 4 hours long. 4 hours. 4 hours long. 4 hours. 4 hours long. 4 hours long. So grab your popcorn, buckle your seatbelts, take your caffeine pills and shove them down your gullet, because it's time for a comparison of Justice League 2017 and the Snyder Cut. Let's go. The original movie is structured like a pretty typical movie, with that sultry 3-act structure Hollywood clings to like it's its final lifeline. However, the Snyder Cut is more like a TV miniseries that's just been released in one girthy 4-hour file. There are even labeled parts every 30 to 40 minutes or so, giving you ample opportunity to stretch your legs and avoid hemorrhoids. This is definitely a smart decision, because sitting down and watching TV for a straight 4 hours, who does that? I don't. Okay, well, if I'm being honest, it happens more than I'd like to admit, but it's nice that Snyder is telling me good spots where I can take a break. Upon turning on the movie, you'll also be greeted by this screen. The film is presented in 4:3 to preserve the integrity of Zack Snyder's vision. And I was today years old when I realized people have significant issues with this aspect ratio. I quite honestly couldn't care less. So long as I can tell what's going on, it really doesn't matter to me. But hey, it helps for this comparison video, since you know that when you see these bars on the side, you're looking at the sultry Snyder Cut, and when you don't, you're looking at the theatrical version. But there are other fairly obvious ways to tell too, because the Snyder Cut is a whole lot darker than the theatrical cut. Not just in plot, in terms of coloring. Personally, I wouldn't have minded a little bit of brighter color correction, but this is far preferable to the theatrical version. Sometimes it looks fine enough, I guess, but a lot of the time it just... where'd all the blacks go? All the darker colors have mixed together. Scenes where it's supposed to be dark don't even look dark anymore. It's like sunlight is beaming straight down into the sewers here. Then a lot of characters look overly pasty and yuck, it just doesn't work. If it's between this and this, I'll take the Snyder version every day of the week. Except Tuesday. On Tuesday, I like bad things. Then there's the music. Now, Danny Elfman worked on the theatrical version, and Danny Elfman has made a lot, and I mean a lot, of soundtracks, including a metric crap ton of music for superhero movies. Unfortunately, I don't like the Justice League soundtrack one bit. Okay, maybe that's not quite it. The biggest problem is how it's used. It feels like it's holding your hand through the whole film, pulling you from direction to direction, telling you, this is exactly what I want you to feel at this moment. There's very little ambiguity or subtlety. On top of that, none of the pieces stayed in my head, there were no memorable melodies, you get the picture. So does that mean the Snyder Cut soundtrack is my favorite thing? Nah, but I like it a whole lot more. To me, JunkieXL's pieces fit better. They're really in-your-face, distorted, dense. In particular, I noticed a heavy use of pulsing percussion and blaring horns. Overall, though, I thought the distortion was a bit much at points and could have been pulled back. Then there's this Amazonian chant, or whatever you want to call it, that just kept playing whenever Wonder Woman did anything. But yeah, it has its issues. I have my problems with it, but I didn't get the same sense that it was grabbing me and yelling, "This is exactly what you need to feel." I would much rather have this version of the soundtrack. Overall, though, regardless of the issues I have, the presentation is immediately a big plus for the Snyder Cut. But you're here for more than that. You're here for that part where some guy complains about the theatrical version, and oh boy, am I gonna complain. I've seen a lot of people blame Joss Whedon for the theatrical version of the Justice League, but I'm not so sure that's entirely fair. After all, the Warner Bros. CEO wanted the film to come in under 2 hours. It's probably no coincidence then that the movie, including credits, comes in at exactly that. So there was probably a whole lot of other corporate meddling going on behind the scenes. I mean, I wouldn't even be shocked if Whedon had a joke quota to meet or something like that. That would sure explain how bad some of these one-liners are.
Like brunch. Like, what is brunch? You wait in line for an hour for essentially lunch.
Bruce said something about you having to take us all to brunch?
Oh, see, now that's cold. That's a betrayal. I feel stung by that.
Either way, who's at fault doesn't really matter all that much to me. What matters most is the end result. First off, yeah, the humor is bad. Even worse though, these lines and quote, funny moments clash with the characters.
Should we bow? Or show rebellious? I don't even understand the physics of how my toes hurt. Children. I work with children.
When the Flash landed on Wonder Woman, just... why add this? Why? And then all of Batman's little quips.
Yeah. Oh, something's definitely bleeding. Do you talk to fish? Sorry, guys. I didn't bring a sword. I knew you didn't bring me back because you like me. I don't.
This isn't even remotely how they portrayed his character in Batman v Superman. Now, I get that he's developed and that he's a bit different and that they specifically didn't want to repeat the mistakes of that movie, but that doesn't mean he's just an entirely different person. Because this right here, this isn't Batman. This is a dollar store Tony Stark. Then there's Lois Lane and Superman. I don't buy the relationship for a minute in this film. When Superman comes back, quippy goofiness.
What was it like? Coming back? A dream.
Why studio execs thought paying millions of dollars to reshoot scenes and either add in this stuff or leave in weird jokes is beyond me. The 2-hour time limit is easily felt too. The movie feels like exactly what it is. A rushed mess of plot stapled together with exposition scenes. Cyborg is this flat, uninspired character. We don't really learn anything much about him or his struggles or his life. Flash doesn't really do anything much. I mean, he saves people during the team's first fight with Steppenwolf, but in the final battle, the fact he can't do much is basically turned into a joke. Another issue is that plot points and dialogue sometimes clash in odd ways. For example, Batman gets after Wonder Woman for not being enough of a leader and a hero right now, even though we saw her save a bunch of civilians at the beginning of the film. What? Maybe Batman's mistaken, but the film doesn't treat it that way. Instead, this is treated like Wonder Woman's actual flaw that needs to be taken care of. There are smaller things too. Like Aquaman and Cyborg start arguing, but then in the final fight, Aquaman's calling him my man. Earlier, Aquaman brought up that Batman dresses like a bat.
Dressed like a bat. You're out of your mind, Bruce Wayne.
But here he seems surprised by that.
Dressed like a bat. I dig it.
I'm sure with more time or more opportunities for reshoots, some of this stuff could have been ironed out, but as it stands, it's confusing. Then there's the fact that when Superman comes back, I get the impression that he's supposed to be kinda out of his mind, not himself, you know? That's why he'd attack people. But then he starts referencing interactions he had with Batman before.
Do you bleed?
On top of that, rushing through everything means that nothing has any weight. For example, Steppenwolf. Who is this guy? I know he wants to take over the world, but that's it. There's nothing else to him. We don't even know why he wants to do this. He simply does. Additionally, when the team realizes they can bring Superman back, it's such a nothing plot point. Out of nowhere, they figure out they can do it because apparently the mother box can heal people. Also, the Russian family. This was probably added in to try to give a concrete human element to the hero's plight to save humanity, but it does nothing for me. Every time the movie cut back to the Russian family, I shrugged my shoulders. It feels tacked on, and I'm sure that's exactly what it is. All in all, the end fight with Steppenwolf was so tensionless that I could hardly believe he was already defeated. They throw some punches, pull apart the boxes, make some goofy jokes, and then Steppenwolf goes up, up, and away. When I say I felt nothing during this whole sequence, I mean I felt nothing. But let's be fair here. What are some good things about the film? Zack Snyder's Justice League is leagues ahead of the theatrical version. So much has been added in and expanded upon that, despite sharing many of the same major plot points, this is effectively a different version of the film altogether. In my opinion, this results in a film that's better across the board. First off, the film has a much more logical, natural flow from plot point to plot point. Some of these are quite small. For example, in both versions, this janitor is killed or taken away by a parademon. In the theatrical version, we cut away from him so fast that it's hard to tell what's going on. In the Snyder Cut, we get to see more. We get to see the parademon clearly, we get to see this guy's reaction to it. It flows much better. Then there's this scene where Wonder Woman learns about the arrow that got shot over from the Amazon warriors. With just a few added lines, her discovery of this goes from awkward and stilted to natural, as she slowly realizes the importance of the news playing out before her on the TV screen. However, there are also big changes. Right off the bat, Superman's death is connected to the mother boxes through his death cry. Then later, Steppenwolf elaborates, explaining a bit of why he decided to attack Earth now.
No protectors here. No lanterns. No Kryptonian.
In the theatrical version, I never understood why the villains didn't attack at some other time before Superman arrived on Earth. But now with this line, I can go, oh, okay, I guess there were probably lanterns there before. It makes much more sense this way. On top of this, the film has a far better sense of stakes. Like I mentioned earlier, in the theatrical cut, Superman coming back is just whatever. We don't really get a sense of the risks associated with bringing him back. But here, well, Cyborg has this terrifying vision showing how things might turn out if this goes wrong. In addition, actions have actual consequences in the Snyder Cut. Specifically, I'm thinking of Silas's death, where a character sacrifices their life so that the heroes can follow the mother boxes back to Steppenwolf's hideout. In the theatrical cut, well, it turns out that bringing the mother boxes together results in an energy surge, so they can just go find them that way. Unfortunately, this explanation cheapens a lot of the events up to this moment because now losing the mother boxes, which should have been a bad thing for the heroes, is instead just the next step on their journey to find them. Basically, instead of experiencing consequences for their mistakes, this brings them closer to their goal. Oddly enough, the Snyder Cut is also funnier than the theatrical version, which I did not expect to be the case. Now, it's not laugh out loud funny. Sure, the movie kept some of the better jokes from the original film, but most of the humor here arises naturally from interactions between these characters. In particular, I really liked Alfred's interactions with Batman and Wonder Woman. The characters are better in other ways too. See, in the Snyder Cut, characters generally have clearly defined arcs and/or motivations. First off, Steppenwolf. Steppenwolf is by no means an amazing villain, but he is so much better in the Snyder Cut. Instead of just being the bad man who wanted to do bad things, he's kind of a loser. He's just this guy who wants to get back to his home and be accepted there and is willing to do anything to get that, no matter how many people he hurts in the process. In addition, his improved design makes him overall more intimidating, but his increased emotional range in and of itself makes him more complex and engaging. I mean, look at his puppy dog eyes. Looks like someone just got told that he's not a good boy. Again, he's pretty pathetic, and I kinda like that. Then there's Superman and Superman's death. Superman's death hangs over the Snyder Cut like a dark cloud. By periodically cutting back to Lois, the film reminds us of his death by focusing on her loss. I also like how Lois works through some of her grief before Superman comes back, which makes her a bit of a stronger character than she'd otherwise be. Later, when Superman himself comes back, he has an increased sense of importance. Specifically, we see him walking through the Kryptonian ship, with the voices of his fathers and mentors echoing in his head, reminding him of his duty. That's in addition to the fact that his scenes with Lois here are way better. Instead of goofy jokes, we focus more on the surprise of his return, and we get a bit of a heart-to-heart between them before he heads out. Batman's motivations are kept similar in this version of the film. The theatrical one, he felt guilty about being a nut job with Superman, and he wants to bring a team of heroes together and bring Superman back because of that fact. In this one, same type of deal. But Batman's better in this version because we got rid of the one-liners, and as such, he's acting more like himself. It's not like he's the greatest version of his character or the best, but it's certainly an improvement from the theatrical cut. Next up, Aquaman. Aquaman is also far better. In the theatrical cut, he was very one-note and kind of a dick. I just recall two major things about him. First, he got really ticked off at Cyborg for some reason. Second, I think his only interaction with Wonder Woman was sitting on her whip and calling her gorgeous, which, yeah, that was weird, wasn't it? Here though, he and Wonder Woman have a little heart-to-heart about the differences and similarities between their people. Additionally, Aquaman cares a lot after Cyborg's dad's death. He thinks it's incredibly unfair that Cyborg is going to need to go and potentially sacrifice himself to save the world out of some sense of responsibility. Basically, he's a bit rounder and definitely more sympathetic in the Snyder Cut. The Flash too. Wow, he's way more interesting and integral to the Snyder Cut. His introduction scene gives us a better sense of his powers, social awkwardness, and good work ethic in one go. Of course, then there's his big moment during the final battle with Steppenwolf. Instead of saving some random family while Superman carries away a whole building full of people, this version of the Flash saves the day by reversing time and stopping Darkseid's invasion. Admittedly, the time travel element does bring some logical questions into the mix, like, how much could he reverse time? Couldn't he do this a bunch? Why is it a rule for him not to do that? It's not a huge deal to me, but I would have liked some answers to these questions, considering that the time travel thing plays a pivotal part in this final section of the film. Then there's Wonder Woman. Wonder Woman doesn't have that much of an arc or particular motivation to speak of. I mean, I guess she's motivated on a basic level at least. She's a superhero, wants to do superhero things and save the world. But it's not like every character needs to have an arc or learn a lesson. In the theatrical cut, they tried to shoehorn in an arc for her, and I didn't think it worked at all. I by far prefer this. But easily the character who has benefited the most from this cut is Cyborg. The theatrical Cyborg, I felt nothing for him. Here though, he's easily my favorite character. In this one, we get the chance to see stuff about him, to see a bit of what his life meant to him before his transformation, and to see what he lost. After all, he lost his body in both versions, but he also lost his mother in the Snyder Cut, which never got brought up in the theatrical version. Beyond that, watching Cyborg learn how to use his powers, watching him help a woman with them, it's a heartwarming, great scene, and it gives him a lot more depth. Finally, when he has to go inside the mother boxes, we get the emotional conclusion to his arc, where he has to face the life he had before and recognize that he can't go back, that he needs to do what he can from here on to help other people, regardless of what he's lost. Which is certainly preferable to him just pulling apart the mother boxes with Superman and then cracking weird jokes that feel sorely out of place for his character. Additionally, Cyborg's story leads into one of the film's epilogue scenes. See, earlier on, Cyborg's father gave him a cassette tape. On this tape, he began by speaking to Cyborg as a scientist, telling him a bit about his powers and guiding him in that manner. Then he tried to speak to Cyborg as his father, and Cyborg crushes it. But at the end, Cyborg goes, puts it back together, and gets to hear his father's final words to him. Unlike Lois's incredibly cloying speech at the end of the theatrical cut, this actually feels earned, and yeah, I felt something. There was some weight to it. However, I don't want to make it sound like I think this version of the movie is perfect or anything like that. There are some scenes that I don't think needed to be as long as they were. Overall, I would have trimmed down the fight scenes and truncated some other parts here and there. In particular, the Flash's introductory scene with this girl. I don't know, it just creeped me out. Stop stroking her, what are you doing? Yeah, cut that part out and it would only be better. I mean, still have him save her, but we don't need that weird stroking stuff. Then there's the CGI, which, yeah, it looks a bit better than the theatrical version CGI, but it still isn't looking great at points. The characters sometimes look really rubbery and out of place. In addition, it didn't fix all of the theatrical version's logical problems, and it introduced some of its own. The main one being, how did Darkseid forget that the anti-life equation was on Earth? I'm sure there could be a reason, but the film doesn't give one, and that's a big thing to gloss over. Another problem I have with the film stems from the scenes in the epilogue that follow Silas's speech. First, we see that Lex Luthor has broken out of jail. Second, Luthor and Deathstroke talk on his yacht. Third, there's this post-apocalyptic vision of the future. Fourth, Batman wakes up and talks with Martian Manhunter. Now, I don't exactly dislike these scenes, but after Silas's speech, I was happy and ready for the movie to end. That felt like a great conclusion to the whole thing. Of course, I know why Snyder wanted to have these scenes in here. After all, the likelihood of him getting to continue this series of films is low, and he wanted to get as much of his vision out there as possible. Even so, I think it would have worked better as a set of bonus scenes released alongside the Snyder Cut as separate files and detached from the film itself in some manner. Either way though, none of my complaints change the fact that I prefer the Snyder Cut to the theatrical version. Frankly, I thought the theatrical cut was terrible, so I didn't have high hopes for the Snyder Cut. But yeah, it's a good, fun story that I enjoyed. I liked it. I'm also just happy it exists. In a world where corporate meddling runs rampant and constantly distorts directors' work, it's great to see this movie released as Snyder intended for it to be released. Now, I'm probably being way too optimistic here, but maybe, just maybe, the success of this version will make studios think a bit more before twisting their director's work or giving asinine mandates about a film's length and stuff like that. Again, probably being too optimistic. But hey, I didn't expect this film to ever exist, so who knows? Maybe I'll be surprised again. Anyway, you know what it's time for now. The sponsorship with Skillshare. Skillshare has thousands of classes to help creative and curious people learn new skills, experiment with art forms, and explore their passions. They have classes on animation, film and video production, music creation, and more. This week, I decided to check out Paul Trillo's course, DIY Green Screen for Film, creating surreal visual effects. In this video series, he goes through explaining how to edit using green screen and interesting applications of the green screen that might be useful. Personally, it got me thinking a lot more about trippy or weird visual effects and transitions I could include in my own videos. So if that sounds interesting to you, I recommend that you check it out. One thing I really like about Skillshare in general, though, is that there are no ads. Also, with an annual subscription, it's less than $10 a month. In addition, the first 1,000 people to click the link in the description will get a free trial of the premium membership. So yeah, click that link, learn some stuff, and have a splendid time. Either way, thank you for watching this video. I love making them, and I'm very happy that you chose to watch through the whole thing today. Have a good one. Bye-bye for now.